Well, Virat Kohli has retired. India is the biggest nation in cricket. In fact, no nation holds as much sway in any sport than India does with cricket, but that wasn't always the case. In fact, you could argue that wasn't the case as recently as 15 years ago. Virat Kohli's retirement from the purest expression of the sport, Test cricket, in many ways signals the end of the beginning phase of India's ascension to the global superpower it aspires to be politically and economically in the game. He is the embodiment, Virat Kohli, of New India, an aspirational, fiercely proud athlete that has taken India to the world. With all of the not taking shit from anyone anymore attitude, someone that could bully the bullies, Pezza. New India that had all the confidence and all the power. He is the third most followed athlete on Instagram, a statement that would not have made sense when his career started. It is said his influence is so strong that he has kept the Test format alive, beyond what is otherwise likely. A generational player, an icon, a global leader, and we thought it best and fitting to take some time to talk about the end of his career in white clothing today, Pezza.
And well said, here goes. And this is a video that is going out and audio that's going out to our entire audience. This isn't being, placed on YouTube for the Indian audience specifically. So there will be people out there going, oh, boys, glaze it up even more. Why don't you glaze it up?
Where was this for Brody?
Where was this for Rohit? But the fact is for us, there's been a bit going on. Coming back from India, IPL off, IPL on, trying to get our feet back on the ground. But when you do step back from it, Kohli's retirement from Test cricket it's a major moment in the game, and it does require its own conversation. And we're thankful. So we will be glazing it up, but we're thankful also to be backed by these guys who've been backing us while we're in India, and soon when we resume our cricket tournament coverage.
10 minutes, Andre.
There he is.
Basket. 10 minutes, Andre. Big basket. 10 minutes, Andre. Big basket. Big basket. Delivering in 10 minutes.
All right, well, we are back in Melbourne, but we will be on the road again. Unfortunately, we won't be returning to India to finish our live show tour over there, but you can see us if you are in the UK in Birmingham at Town Hall, July 3, and in London at Eventum Apollo, July 13. Tickets available at greycricketer.com, where we hope at least to complete that tour if possible. Also, as Pezza rightly said at the top, the big cricket tournament in Bharat Breakfast will return on Sunday morning in fact, Virat Kohli's playing that game.
Exactly.
Asabeth the Chinnaswamy there. Who are they playing against? Do you remember?
KKR.
KKR, okay.
Kohli net session off the chain, apparently, the other day.
There's a lot of guys in India who are account guy, tweet guys. They're doing big numbers at the moment. Let me tell you.
The content's unbelievable.
Okay.
Subject matter.
We'll talk about like the what Kohli meant, his numbers, maybe some flash points, and then sort of what to next. It was structure this chat that way. So I feel like the numbers are one thing with Kohli, right? But I mean, he won't be the best Test player India's ever produced. He won't be the best of his generation, though he will be the best all-format player, perhaps ever, certainly. The average of 46 doesn't seem fair or right. There's 30 hundreds. That seems unders somehow. So you think, why is this such a big deal? And it's because of what the guy meant to the game, right?
Yeah. Who's better than him in his generation? You mean like Bumrah or something like that?
I meant Test players.
Test players?
Yeah. Well, I'd say Smith and Root.
Oh, you mean of like around the world? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I've been reading all of the obituaries to his career, to his Test career, and they are just absolutely glowing, and everybody's climbing over one another to come up with the grandest description of this guy. I see what you say about the numbers, and I don't know. I feel like someone's got to go in and break down why it is what it was, because 46 is unders at Test level, where he was sitting at like 62 or something like that at the end of his captaincy. A couple of things changed in the pitches in India around that time, and wobble seam came in. He's, the dual breaking of his power. But I mean, to me, I think he's the most iconic cricketer this century. And I think among the most iconic cricketers ever. And I think for a couple of key reasons. I think he dignified Test cricket at a time when you could argue that it was under threat in India. The way that he played with classicism and aggression and verve. As you said, he was a glowing symbol of the new, confident India, and it was kind of built on this like cosmic talent that he had, and then he went through this like Djokovic-esque like mastery of the self, ultimate fitness, intensity, bananas, almonds, protein shakes, cardio, gluten-free. I think that his like at his absolute best, he's just about in everyone's best cricket team, as a bat. And then there was the entire element of like, the political and social context that he comes through in, like, so when I think about that number 46 as his Test average, which is just an average that is no average I said this on another show the other day, but no average is less befitting, I think, of a player of his greatness. Warney didn't have the best bowling average either, finishing up at 25, good average, but it's not the number you expect next to someone that you go, oh, here's the best to do it,
Yep.
So early foray for me there on like the difference between the Test numbers next to his name and what he actually was.
Yeah, I think like there's a delineation between like what he achieved on the field is extraordinary, but it's not quite in like the top like two ever. But in terms of importance in the game, especially in this moment in time, and what India is doing with the game and where they are going as a country as well, how it seems from the outside anyway. Stay in your lane stuff. This is an internal matter kind of gear. It transcends him to one of the most important athletes to have ever played any sport. I don't think that's even overstating it, because, he was the embodiment, I think, of what could be achieved in India. He was the hardest trainer, most intense, gym, back, biceps, cardio stuff, sure. You mentioned his diet. Name a diet, he's done it twice. No backward steps. Grabbing a game by the scruff of the neck. Every pro athlete wants to win, Ganguly, Gavaskar, Dhoni, Dravid. These guys all wanted to win, but I think there was something like he was so demonstrative in his demeanor that, like, being the boy from Delhi, he was this passionate guy. It seemed like he wanted to win more than anyone you'd have ever seen before. Sledging while batting, letting his bat do the talking, whilst also letting his mouth do the talking. As a nation that was seeking its next superstar, Kohli continually championed Test cricket, calling it the most important and the purest format. As a captain, India were the best Test side for 4 years, I think from 2016 to 2020, something like that. They were probably even better than most teams after that as well. He was so fit, so intense, prioritised fast bowling as a captain as well. We hadn't seen an Indian side that won the games the way that they were winning, especially overseas. He was a strong advocate of the World Test Championship as well. I know some nations haven't been able to figure out how that works just yet, but
Sure.
But he was one that prioritised in that way. And so, like, I remember a while ago Shane Warne saying that we should be thanking Virat Kohli for his contribution to Test cricket. And at the time, I didn't really understand what that meant, but Greg Chappell actually wrote something, which I know is a controversial figure to bring up at this moment of time, but he said this in his article he wrote for the Sydney Morning Herald the other day. He said, there was a time when Indian cricket, particularly overseas, bore the air of respectful submission, playing with technical skills, yes, but often with psychological inferiority. That changed in stages. Sourav Ganguly gave it a new spine. MS Dhoni brought ice-cold leadership and white ball dominance. But Kohli lit the fire. He tore the script and authored a new one where India was not just competitive abroad, it expected to win. And that in terms of what he meant to India, especially in red ball cricket, I think is well put as well. Jonathan Liu wrote in The Guardian as well, the finances of the game are still grossly unequal. The smaller nations still need more support. Kohli always resisted the idea that one man could sustain Test cricket by exemplar alone. Always urged national boards to invest in red ball cricket. Always argued that the dominance of 2020 was not simply a question of finance, but of standards, facilities, and basic respect. In this respect, he may well end up being the most consequential cricketer of his age. So there's two different thoughts from Australia and the UK there. Which speak to his importance to the game outside of what his numbers did on the field.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually the thought that is that I'm left with him retiring from Test cricket is how used to him playing I had personally become, and even just thinking about the upcoming India series, how different that Indian team is going to look and feel without Kohli there and Rohit too. But just focusing on Kohli for the purposes of this video, and how much he has essentially been an emblem of the possibilities of India. I mean, I think what Chappell says, whether Chappell's right or wrong, I suspect he is right, but what he does reflect, and I could say this with some kind of credibility, he definitely reflects the way a lot of Anglo people had seen Indian cricket. Great with the blade, great sticks.
Love having a stick.
But you could probably get at them eventually, and you could probably intimidate them, right? But like Kohli ended up becoming this emblem of Indian aggression and fierceness. He showed you what that could look like and how fierce it could be. And there were periods there, particularly towards like the end of the 2010s when, and getting into they beat us at the Gabba stuff. I know he wasn't there for that, but where it was just like he was the emblem of like, oh holy shit, this is like Asian century stuff,
right?
Particularly that duo he formed with Shastri, And then there's this thing and it always happens upon the end of a career or the end of anything, whether a relationship or a death or something like that, where you like there are controversies, there are parts where you go like, yeah, there's a bit of carry on there, and there was, and we should talk about it, but like you just actually left with the feeling of what the guy gave you, and it was just such a blessing. He was just so visceral, to Test cricket. I think his departure leaves an enormous gap, to the point where I'm kind of like, it was funny because after the last BGT, we were kind of laughing at like, how will they contort themselves to get Rohit and Kohli into the next series when they're clearly finished, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm kind of like, let one of them play, because you just want it, like you want the presence on the field,
yeah.
And I look in the rush to correctly deify him with a macro look at his career.
Yeah.
I am curious about what the machinations of that were, around Rohit announcing his retirement, Kohli soon off the back of it. It may be that there's nothing to it, but I do wonder if there was a query there about whether he might skip over there or whether I'm just having a fantasy. Or the extent to which Gambier, who was also the who should take some responsibility for the BGT result, is sweeping them aside to usher in a new era, and whether that's great, and courageous leadership that needs to happen in Indian cricket, or whether it was an exercise in influence and power.
Yeah. Greg Chappell also wrote in his piece that Kohli was the most Australian non-Australian player, which is perfectly put. I mean, he was well respected in Australia ultimately, when he came to Australia.
And there'd be a lot of Indians listening to that going, what? Not that I could see, but that's we have a weird way of respecting people.
It's the greatest mark of respect.
Exactly.
He's okay.
Exactly. It's like when you're throwing a pencil at a girl in year 2. You're like, I love her.
I love her.
I'm in love.
I'm in love with you.
Yeah. This is how I flirt.
We hadn't seen a guy stand up to Australia's barrage of attack before, and the way that Australia bowled at the time. Mitchell Johnson there were so many flashpoints with him at the time, but he was so good on the back foot as well. It's something that we hadn't really seen in Australia before. But he was so aggressive and so brash and so demonstrative. And
you could see, you have Flash Harrys in Australia. People come along and have a crack at Australia, but very rarely can they back it up.
They make 25.
Exactly. And you wave them off. But this bloke's like his first time captaining is just 100.
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh
right.
shit.
So let's talk about the numbers. So it's 123 tests. It's 9,230 runs. It's a higher score of 254 red at Pune against South Africa in 2019. It's an average of 46.85. It's 30 centuries, 7 of them were doubles, and 31 half centuries, 121 grabs. And against Australia, he played 18 times against Australia. In Australia, he played 18 times. He scored 1,542 runs in Australia, highest score of 169 in the MCG 2014. He averaged 46 in Australia. There was 700s and 4 half centuries in Australia. I would say his 2 best series away from home came in England in 2018. I'll talk about that in a second. But Australia 2014 was when this guy was like, holy shit, this is one of the best guys who have ever come to Australia. There was 400s in a series. In 2014-15, he had 115 and 141 in Adelaide. That was the Phillip Hughes Test match, of course. People in Australia will remember that. He had 169 at the MCG, then 147 a week later at the SCG. And then also there was the 2018-19 series where Australia were on its knees after sandpaper, and he smelt blood, and then he won that series, as captain. So it was extraordinary.
At 100 at Perth was unbelievable as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think the more one watches Test cricket, the more you judge excellence by your command of foreign conditions, and this is a guy you can't question that. He's got no blot on the copybook there. To have the same average in Australia as he does overall in his career against some pretty good sides is an indicator of his excellence. He's got, and there are plenty of guys with higher averages than him who I think cashed in on some pretty decent home decks. Which you can only play on the deck that you've got. But Kohli on multiple occasions showed a command of conditions in Australia and a command of conditions in England, and not just in a neutral way, but in a dominant way. He could humiliate that home opposition when he was at his best, which again just underscores that he's an icon of batting over and above the average that he finishes with.
Yeah, there's probably 5-6 years there, probably 5 years definitely, where they favoured the wickets towards their 2 spinners, or 3 spinners if you include Akshar Patel. Of course, Ashwin and Jadeja I'm referring to. So, there's probably near enough 30-35 Test matches there at home where other players all around the world have got favourable batting conditions. But then in the last few years, it seems like the game is tilted towards bowling now. There's less and less big scores being racked up. But in England, in England 2018, he put together one of his a mastery of batting display. 593 runs, averaging 59. He was a leading run scorer of that series by a distance. 4 years earlier, he'd been figured out by Anderson with some late swing, and so to do it again. To do it in 2018 after that traumatizing series was pretty extraordinary. I mean, eventually he sort of it became like the most obvious thing in the world how to get him out. Which was so bizarre because at one time he used to just crush a cover drive. It was one of the greatest shots in the game. And then you're just sort of hanging out there on, I guess, juicier decks in the last 5 years of his career. And it was just, it was money for jam. But there's also, in terms of a sadness of him leaving, I feel like there's a little bit of a Messi going to Miami, Ronaldo going to Saudi element to it where they're still playing. But it's not at the height, the best years have already gone, you know? And so I sort of marvel at the idea that he averages 46 when, I mentioned the 5 years at home where he didn't get the decks he would have liked. If the team was built around him scoring the runs to win games, he could have easily averaged 15 more than what he ended up doing, easily. But
for those who jump into the comments who are firstly saying, waiting for Rohit video, but also secondly pointing out that I think he ends up, get this wrong, but I think he ends up averaging 55 at home and 41 away. So it's an away issue, but we're talking specifically the last 5 years here where you get a few cash in hundreds. I think he cashed in before that at home in India, but then a couple of tweakers. This is Ashwin's fault, and we've always been clear about that. You know what I mean? Look no further than Ashwin if you've got a problem with the average.
Yeah, where's the Ashwin video?
But yeah, again, that is. I think there's an interesting difference between the outlook to cricket from Anglo-spheric nations and India. I mean, he hasn't retired from ODI cricket, which suggests to me that he's got something he'd like to tick off there. And so the Champions Trophy wasn't it.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Right, again. So this is all comes back to why didn't you do the Champions Trophy, boys? It's all about us. It's funny to me that he, if indeed he is hanging around for the next World Cup, which, form suggests he could, they play about 10 games of ODI cricket a year now and nothing else. How does he get himself ready for that? Just a couple of knocks at the Chinnaswamy for a couple of months a year and just whatever.
Dhoni's farm, I reckon.
Just head to the farm, get hench. Oh, yeah.
Grow his hair out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's nice. I'd like that.
Chest and arms. grow the hair out.
Yeah.
IPL, World Cup.
I mean, it's easy to forget his height. I think, like, that period, that moment in the Test documentary where JL just goes like, Virat Kohli is the best player I've ever seen in my life.
That's pretty good. That's high praise.
Gladiatorial style of leadership, his elite fitness level, and his ability to deliver in high-stakes situations. Langer also stated that he would, quote, put his life and last dollar on Kohli if he had to choose a batsman.
Wow.
That's where he was at the time. Now, like JL is, prone to hyperbole, like the best of us.
And
right?
gambling.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's never gambled a dollar in his life. That's the trick in that. Again, I don't know. I prefer to remember players at their height more than their than the end.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's always it's just that thing classically of you want to appreciate when the peak is. We actually saw this with we thought we'd seen the last of Steve Smith as an example, and the peak, and then he seems to have
who averages 56, by the way.
Yeah, and then like Tendulkar got something back when he was like 38 or whatever,
Yeah.
And again, different conditions, different time, different stage of cricket and whatever. So it's comparing apples and oranges, as I often do.
I see, yeah. He's just standing there with an apple and an orange, man. How do we compare these?
When I've got money for jam.
Yes.
Nice. a lot of fruits. Anyway, so but yeah, I guess almost like in Australia, we saw the peak 10, 11 years ago, in that series we scored 400s. There was so much going on in Australian cricket at the time, of course, but I mean, it's unlikely we'll ever see. I'm sure at some point we'll see a guy score 400s in a series. I don't think it'll be for a while though, depending on what happens with Test cricket. All right, let's do this though. Let's do Flashdog.
Oh, Chucky, not on it. Fucking hell. Who better?
Who better?
Is that the?
Well, yeah,
I don't know what is the topic of Flashdog. Is it?
Well,
Mount Rushmore stuff for me.
I want to talk about the flashpoints. The flashpoints in his career.
Nice. Yeah.
So, against Australia, there was, flipping the bird at the SCG in 2012 where he said to the match referee, "I'm sorry, please don't ban me." And they fined him 50% of his match fee. There was the constant sledging, which we liked, of course, in Australia. There was a shoulder charging of Sam Constance last year. There was a sandpaper in pockets last year. There was walking up to the stump mic in South Africa and saying, focus on your own team as well when they shine the ball.
That was my favourite.
Not just the opposition trying to catch people all the time. A touching support for Australia during their sandpaper disaster. There was telling the crowd to stop booing Steve Smith at the 2019 World Cup in England. There was just about the accusation to Steve Smith of cheating or looking into the dugout during the DRS in India.
Correctly.
There were flashpoints with the mic drops against Joe Root when he ran him out in England. There was walking up to Bairstow from second slip in a heated exchange. Then there was the incident, talking to Anushka in the VIP box from the dressing room from a rain delay at Chinnaswamy that time. I think 2015 maybe. And then there was liking some girl's photo on Instagram 3 weeks ago. Couple of flashpoints there over the course of the career, but anyone that plays top level sport, I'd imagine for a
is that what happened though? Is he's liked it and there's just like she's just said pack him.
Well, come to a live show and we'll dissect it because it can happen.
It
can happen. So like he was a guy that's hard on the sleeve. Of course, I wouldn't say lived on the edge necessarily, but he was so fiery and so demonstrative all the time. It felt like such a born winner. Fought over millimeters and inches. Don't catch the Mad Max sale, which I'm pretty sure is finished.
That's for YouTube watchers.
That's right. It's kind of surprising there was actually so few flashpoints because it felt like every time he was on the field, something was happening. Like if you watch cricket in India, there was Kohli cam. There wasn't just player cam. There was Kohli cam. Something was happening all the time.
It's good, like this shows. This is the grade cricketer, like if how are we going to talk about cricket if there's just like statesman-like, diplomatic blokes like knocking around in all games? I mean, the business has already suffered for several years following Cummins' leadership.
Yeah, it's a joke.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's an absolute joke. So we've
Marxist.
that's to put it mildly.
Mad Marxist.
The Mad Marxist sale, which I think is finished.
That's finished.
That's right.
Yeah.
They asked at the Greens. Thank God we had that as well. There was something, this is probably glib and cliche, but there was something very refreshingly human about Kohli for somebody of his stardom. And there aren't that many that compare to his stardom, I think, when you think about modern media and the rise of India and all this sort of stuff. And he still he still played cricket like he was just a red mistman playing threes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he liked contest. It was very relatable. It's just that he was a freak of a player.
Yeah.
I always wondered with that finger up thing. We were talking about the different types of ways you flip the bird, on another show that we did. His finger actually looks quite small in
It's
that.
a little coy.
Is it? No,
Yeah.
it's just the size of the finger itself. I just that always surprised me.
Got like fully extended. Sort of
Yeah,
like
it must
that.
be an angle thing.
Yeah, it
Has
might
it?
be an
But
angle.
I don't think that suits him well.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a longer finger. I mean, you don't score that many runs without a certain thickness.
Oh, it's one of the great fingers.
But so there's some coat stuff. But like if you're sitting there, particularly as an Australian, if you want to get into tribal areas, right, and you're sitting there at the end of this guy's career, 9,000 test runs at 46 all across the world, probably could have been 56 if his administration gave him a crack in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And hid his weaknesses, essentially.
They did win a lot of games, to be fair to them.
Okay, they won. Yeah. I mean, if winning is, is the metric. But if you are sitting there going like, what I'm going to remember about Kohli is his carry on. It's like, man, you just don't want to see the wood for the trees. Like, carry on's good ultimately. I mean, his Kohli's style of carry on wasn't like it was abrasive, but it never to me it never ventured into areas of like this is too far. Now, actually, come to think of it, if you speak to a few players, especially early in his career, he probably was saying a few things that are a bit out of line. But you live, you learn, and sometimes you don't learn as well.
Sometimes, like
I'm just saying, I liked the mist.
There'll be a lot of people talking about like especially in white ball cricket. There's an eternal accusation that he bats for himself and bats for red ink and that kind of stuff. But you do think at the same time like he was really quite selfless to in the time when India didn't lose a session for 15 years in India. He wasn't that team being like, geez, I'm really sacrificing my legacy here for the spinners. Now the team did win a lot. But, I'd imagine from his perspective, he must have been a bit like, fucking hell, any danger.
I've got to say,
give us a flatty.
Imagine what it takes to come through the Indian cricket system as a junior and emerge as the best talent. And the amount of runs you'd be carrying around in your back pocket in that. And you get to the peak of your career, like the very peak. So 2019, what is he, 31? Like people are saying that's when his natural decline started. No one's natural decline starts at 31.
No, that's his best years for batting.
Pretty much
29, 31.
So you get to this point, and he's averaging 66 in Test cricket at this time. Then the administrators just go like three-pronged spin attack. Well, it's going to be 100 plays 100, and we'll be better than the other team.
We've got this new guy.
As if he's not going to be there going any danger. Like I finally scale the mountain to possibly take on Bradman here for runs.
I'm going past Gavaskar
exactly.
for runs here.
And I think Kohli is a great shout of being the greatest all-format batter of all time,
yes,
by the way.
I agree.
And then just at that time, they just go like, shit tips now.
Yeah.
Like, because we can spear into the deck at 95 Ks.
Yeah.
And so you're actually saying quite selfless to not be kicking up a stink.
Exactly, yeah.
In that situation.
Exactly.
I'd love to sit down with some of those Indian players, and we know it'll never happen, and just get some sort of eye roll or something and just go, oh, yeah, what is any danger?
Yeah.
Any danger of a deck for some runs. I live for I live for batting.
Yeah.
I live for having a stick.
Exactly. Live for stick. All right, last thing. What next for India? I saw a tweet from our friend Will McPherson
Nice.
in the UK, and that's got nothing to do with this. I'm just telling you what I saw.
Yeah, nice.
He said this. He said, Sachin Tendulkar moved up to number 4 in India's batting order in early 1992. Virat Kohli took over the job in late 2013. Obviously, they missed a few tests here and there, but that is 33 years of unbelievable stability. Good luck to the next guy. Oh, that's a pretty good point. I mean, there is any time... Okay, just think about it.
And does there have to be a next guy? This is India, right? There has to be a next guy.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for the next guy all the time. Aren't we all?
And they're all... Well, I don't know, I live for stick, can you say?
Yeah, like... I mean, I think it's a pretty good point. 33 years of stability. I mean, you think about what happened to the Australian side when they lost more or less the same time Hayden Langer, Warne, and McGrath-ish, broadly the same time. I mean, India have lost Ashwin, Rohit, and Kohli. Only really Jadeja left from that legacy era. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple of guys coming through. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. It will be interesting to see what happens, in the next little bit, because there's just a Kohli-sized hole in terms of that dressing room influence. Not just, look, the last couple of years, the runs haven't been
Irreplaceable.
there.
Just irreplaceable.
They might have guys who can score more runs, but I don't know if they'll find a guy that wants to win as much as him. It's irreplaceable.
And they're saying, it sounds like Shubman's next cab. They want to go new generation. Gautam Gambhir wants a young guy to mould, I suppose. And
Ghost style.
yeah. Shubman Gill is a clay pot, and Gautam Gambhir is Patrick Swayze. Or is it Demi Moore? I'm not sure. Swayze's over the top, I think. Anyway, and so it sounds like, like Shubman is the anointed one. Wouldn't say he's nailed Test cricket yet. Probably hard to nail Test cricket when you're playing 3 formats and you can't get a deck from your administrators. But decent enough player. What I want to say in Shubman's defence is that I think he's got some red mist in him too. And I don't think people are quite onto that yet in the Anglosphere. And I think that'll be good. I want to see some red mist from Shubman if he's looking to replace Kohli in that respect. But also, I don't know, like the conversation around Bumrah not being next in line to be captain, to me appears to echo conversations that happened about 10 years ago here in Australia, which was just the notion of a fast bowler being captain wasn't one you could consider because they can't get on the park all the time. Now, Cummins has just disproved that. He gets on the park most of the time, but not all the time. Steve Smith has stepped in before, and when Bumrah has captained, he's done well, most recently at Perth. I would love to know more about the machinations around that and whether there's any connection between that and Kohli's retirement. Maybe there's not at all, but yeah, it looks like Shubman's he's the next generational bat. They'll give him that spot. He'll get a chance to, get his hands around that clay pot and mould.
There's such different personalities, Tendulkar and Kohli. I was thinking like
you want to talk like comparisons now.
No. I mean, not really. I was just thinking like Tendulkar walked so Kohli can run, but I don't think they're such different people.
Yeah.
I think there's a much greater similarity between Kohli and Shubman Gill, for instance. That new India, that brashness. I mean, they've all got like endorsements, and they're all on social media, and they like there's this new face of India. Skin products are glorious stuff. Don't get me wrong, but I just wonder, all that distraction outside of the game didn't feel like Sachin had that, but just because he grew up in the 80s and 90s, Sachin. Whereas Kohli was the face of, he was visible tattoos. That was sort of a new thing, as Michael Clark was in Australia, a captain that had tattoos on him, and it was a new age coming through. Kohli with a bit of bling, tattoos, hair, ads, it's a new style. Shubman Gill is in that same mold as well. I wonder if Shubman is excited to take it on, or if there's going to be a weight of expectation being like, you ain't Virat. I guess it would be both ways, because India's such a massive country.
Yeah. One question we got a lot in India was at the live shows was to compare Sachin and Virat, and comparisons to Thief of All Joy. So I just shut that question down and moved on. But I know as a young Australian, like the Tendulkar was such a phenomenon because our team would bully every single other team except basically for like Lara and Tendulkar. Yeah. There were these two guys that somehow, they were the only batters that somehow put Australian bowlers back in their box most of the time. And Tendulkar, was knocking around with the late Don Bradman saying, yeah, this guy reminds me of me, which as an Australian, and you're like 10 years old, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. But he cherished his privacy, Tendulkar, and he seemed to be like from afar, like they tell you in India that the streets stopped when the streets were empty when Tendulkar was batting. It's probably mythological. Fair few people knocking around. I guess there were people on the streets.
And also the streets will never forget.
The streets will never forget Prithvi Shaw. But Virat's something different, altogether. They're actually, I don't know, I feel like they're symbiotic in a way. I know for me, I just like, I don't know if it's really sunk in, and not that particularly matters, but I think that Virat's probably my favourite ever Indian cricketer for all of the things that we've discussed. I feel like he looms the largest, you know. And I know that in India, Dhoni is this kind of Dhoni is a god in so many ways, but for his exploits across all three formats, and I suppose in a vain way, Australians love Kohli because, you know, we see ourselves in him, you know, in the mirror, even though he's way better than most of us. We're just sitting on the couch with Doritos on our chest and drinking VB. But like we see so much of ourselves in him, and he, you know, was such an adversary for so long.
Yeah.
I think he's I actually his legacy will grow the longer he's out, I think.
Yeah. You know, he's such a big figure. You know, it may be another generation before a player with this much significance to the game will come around. You know, I'd be surprised if it happens so quickly after a guy like Kohli. You know, and in terms of you know, from our perspective, sitting down here and talking about it for 40, 45 minutes or however long we've been going for here, is just that. It's just he is such a unique personality, what he's meant to Test cricket. Who knows what happens to Test cricket now, because there's not this guy who's championing it, if I could speak.
Championing
it anymore.
That's a BCCI.
You know, putting it up on a pedestal, and I guess we'll see what happens next. But yeah, you know, it's just one of those. It's one of those things where like you just wish you could appreciate it when it was actually playing at its peak. Oh. And in the last couple of years, it was like, yeah, good. Hope he plays.
It's grandparent stuff, really.
Fifth stump, nick him off, easy.
Exactly. Oh, that's all. Just talk to Scott Bowens. I mean, just fifth, sixth, hanging out there. He'll give you when he wants to feel it on the bat.
A touching tribute.
It's grandparent stuff for me. You know, grandkid stuff.
Right.
Like it's like you know, like the. You'll see a number next to Kohli's name in Test cricket, and it'll be like, it's more than that. It's fucking way more than that. He's a great. He's a great of the game. He's a great of the code.
Yeah. And so one down of the Fab Four, as coined by, was it Martin Crowe's coined that? The Fab Four? I think he was the one that coined it.
Right. Well, it was originally ascribed to the Beatles, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it was Ringo that said that though. Anyway, so there you go. Virat Kohli retiring from Test cricket. We'll see you guys on Sunday if you're interested for our review of the tournament that happens over there per night in a T20 style format. And if you want to come and see us live, if you're in the UK, tickets at greatcricket.com. And if you are enjoying this podcast, we'll be back with the main podcast through your ears in a couple of weeks' time. A couple of Mondays' time, we'll be back. And so much more happening here on TGC. So thanks for joining us here. A wonderful tribute to our close personal friend, Virat Kohli. Virat, see you soon, brother.